Hello everyone, welcome back to a new video. Today I'm trying a new technique for making a light box. So I was a little stuck for ideas for this project, but I got really into dragons after my last light box, so I knew I wanted another dragon light box of sorts, and I've had this idea for so long to create a light box where you can look in from above and it creates depth like you're looking deeper underwater or something, so I used this idea as a starting point. I started sketching and I came up with an idea right away. I really thought it would be cool to have a person in like a little rowboat floating on a lake or down the pond or wherever they are, and there's a lot of vegetation and it's a very safe, cozy feeling environment, and then there would be something sinister like swimming under the boat, under the water, kind of like when you see those videos where like the crocodile just comes out of the water out of nowhere and it's like scary because you didn't know they were there and it's just scary. So I thought I would try something like that. So I just kind of sketched a bit and I tried to figure out the creature I wanted. I knew I wanted a dragon kind of fish of sorts, so I tried to figure out how I wanted that to look, and then of course the composition. And at this point I also decided that for the vegetation I mainly wanted lily pads, so that kind of worked its way into the light box. And this is what I ended up with, so now it's just time to start actually making the light box. I start with the dragon since in this case the main subjects dictate where the lily pads go, and so it's easier to start with the subjects and everything else kind of works around it. Sometimes when the environment is less organic, then it's better to start with the environment and then place the characters in their designated spots, but not in every case and not in this case. I wanted to take some influences from crocodiles and like the creepy freshwater fish rather than like ocean creatures, so I try to make the dragon have a long skinny nose like those garfish with the pointy teeth, because I thought it would be interesting, but I don't know if you could really tell that was my inspiration, but it is what it is. I draw out the whole dragon with all the fins and details, which just make it easier for cutting things out, and then I just cut off everything and leave the main body. All the fins and horns and everything else will be cut out separately and glued on with foam board for depth and details. And for now, this is all I do for the dragon because I like to jump around, and I start on the rowboat. I also really wanted this boat to have some depth, so I started with the base. I had to create the boat from the top view down, so that added a little extra challenge because I've never really done this kind of thing. So I just created the floor of the boat complete with planks, and then I just hacked away with my knife to create some wood grain texture. Then for the sides of the boat, like the little rim around the edge, I draw and I cut a little strip and glue it onto the boat with foam board. That makes it a bit 3D. I also create a little plank of wood for the seat and I glue that on across the boat from side to side. And the final detail I make on the boat for now are the oars. I created 2 of them and they were very simple, and I just added that same wood texture to the paddle parts. Then I glue them onto the boat and I placed them a little crookedly so it didn't look so deliberately perfectly placed, like, you know, I want it to look kind of organic. And now I go back to the dragon and I cut out all the flippers and the little horns. And these shapes are just very simple, so they were really easy to do. The horns caused me a slight trouble because I had the plan that like half of the horns would be underwater and then like the tips of them would come above the water, so I had to cut the horns like in half so then I could have the dragon part under the water, and then the tops of the horns I would glue above the water, so that caused a little bit of an issue, but overall nothing too crazy. And for the main fin running along the back of the dragonfish, I have to be very careful and make sure it follows the shape of the dragon perfectly or else it'll be off. I also decided to make this fin kind of look like hair almost, so that was a little unique touch. Then I go and I cut tiny little slits along the fish's body to create scales. I also cut some shapes out of the nose to look like bigger scales. Then I glue tracing paper to cover those holes to create some more texture and interest. Then to assemble all these pieces, I go and I get my foam board and I cut a bunch of teeny tiny little squares from it, and I glue one onto each of the fins to attach it to the main body. Then I go and I just glue every little piece on, and it's really cool to see the dragon finally be done and come together like this. It's always so much fun to do this, and it's always my favorite part. Now it's time to move on to the environment. I had this idea that there would be lots of lily pads on the surface of the water, and then underwater there would just be more and more and more, going deeper and deeper. So I got the boat and the dragon and I placed them together exactly how I wanted to look completed, and I used them as a guide to plan out where the lily pads will grow. And I know technically lily pads don't grow underwater, but I thought it would be a cool environment and I don't care. So now begins the very tedious task of cutting layers and layers of lily pads. This was not the most fun, honestly. Cutting round shapes really hurts my hands somehow. It's so weird, like I can cut any shape you can imagine in all these light boxes and it's fine, but when I have to go and cut round shapes, it always hurts my hands and I don't know why. But anyways, I thought that while I work on this boring part of the light box, I'll talk about the backstory for it. So in this world, there is a lost hidden treasure that was stolen from the king by pirates many years ago. It is well known that the king had some magical possessions. He used these magical items to rule the land for ages. Most important of all is a powerful necklace that can bring about life in the craziest ways imaginable. Once these items were stolen, the king lost all power and the kingdom collapsed and chaos ensued. Anyone who finds that necklace would become the most powerful person on Earth. No one knows what really happened to the treasure, since the pirates were caught short after they hid it and were executed without revealing the whereabouts of the loot. But there are rumors that there is a pond somewhere deep in the forest where the pirates hid the treasure, but this is only an old myth. Many people ventured out into the wilds in search of the treasure, but were unsuccessful. One day this man decides to go in search of the treasure like many others. He lives a very normal life as a farmer and is very happy. He loves his work and has a loving family, but lately he's been having headaches and has felt a voice deep inside calling him out to the forest. It started off faint, but then slowly started driving him crazy. He never knew what it was, but it got worse and worse. His wife started getting worried as he would start lashing out from the pain. He slowly became crazier until one day he snapped and hit her. She left and he never saw her again. He became more and more miserable and it became too much, so he packed up and set off into the forest. He didn't know what he was doing really, but he just followed the voice. He encountered many dangerous creatures as he went deeper and deeper, but strangely they never tried to kill him or hurt him in any way. So he kept pushing forward, thinking he must be close to the source, but he wasn't. He kept going for weeks on end. The trees became taller and darker. There were no animals anymore, no light, no sound, just tall, dark trees. He started doubting everything, but it was too late to turn back. He ran out of food and realized the forest must be playing tricks on him, or maybe he just went crazy. So when suddenly he started seeing light through the trees, he thought he was hallucinating, but as he went closer, he saw it. A beautiful pond with glowing water and lily pads bigger than him taking over. There were fish swimming around, birds chirping, frogs croaking. He could barely believe his eyes, but he knew this was the place. That feeling was stronger than ever. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw a little rowboat tied to a log in the side of the pond. He was exhausted, but realized what he had to do. He sat in the boat and started rowing it out to the middle of the pond. As he looked around in amazement, he noticed a movement from the water. He looked down to see what was under him, and he froze. Under the water, silently circling him, was a dragon. It was the most beautiful yet scary thing he'd ever seen. As he sat marveling at it, the dragon spoke to him. It said, "So you found this place." The man was at a loss, but he managed to say, "Yes, who are you, and how did you know I was coming?" The dragon replied, "Of course I knew you were coming. I've been calling to you." The man gasped in realization. "You were that voice I kept hearing." The dragon replied, "Yes, I called you here for a reason. You and I are the same." "What do you mean?" the man asked. The dragon replied, "That necklace brings life about in many ways. It created this pond and everything you see around it. It created me. It created you. I've been here protecting it for many years, longer than you've been alive, but I've grown weak and tired, so I reached out to you for help. The necklace is strong, but without a person to wield it, it becomes weak over time. Someone had to find it, and I chose you." "Why me?" asked the man, confused. "Because you never wanted power. You only came to seek it out because of me. You live humbly and could use its power wisely." Upon hearing this, the man got angry. "You mean you ruined my perfectly happy and peaceful life just for a necklace I never cared for?" At this, the dragon replied, "This is more important than you know, you pathetic human. If this necklace dies, so does all of life. We all have to make sacrifices. Now take it." And with that, the dragon dives under the water, and with the flick of its tail, it flips the boat over. The man falls into the water and starts sinking. He's too weak to swim to the surface, so he sinks deeper and deeper until he reaches the bottom, and there he sees the glowing necklace tangled amongst the lily pads. It's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, and his hand automatically reaches to grab it. As his hand closes around it, he feels a shock go through his whole body, and his strength returns. He feels strong and full of life, and he swims up to the surface with the necklace. As he swims to shore, he looks around, and the dragon is nowhere to be seen. He pulls himself onto land and sits down to catch his breath. He looks at the necklace and tries to comprehend what just happened. He was mad. He hated the dragon. He hated the necklace. He hated his wife. He hated the world for robbing him of happiness. He wanted nothing to do with this whole thing. He got up to throw the necklace back into the water, but he couldn't loosen his grip around it. He sat back against a tree, defeated. He stayed there for hours contemplating. He knew that he couldn't get rid of it no matter what. This was now his burden to bear. With a sigh, he slowly gets up and walks off into the trees. So yeah, that's the story of it all. Let me know what you guys think. And so originally I wanted to use tracing paper for the water because it's see-through, but it would look a little different and I could glue the boat onto it. But then I realized that doesn't work because you can't really see through the tracing paper very well, and it covers up all of my hard work, so I have to think of something else. And I found this Ziploc bag, and I thought maybe I could take this clear plastic to be the water, and then you can see everything under it, but I can still glue the boat on and everything, so I just go and I cut out a piece of this bag. And now I get started on details. I start with some loose lily pads that will float in the middle, and I also decided I wanted some fish swimming under the surface, so I created a few fish as well. I also drew and cut out the parts of the man on the boat, and some of his tools like a knife, a backpack, and a few other things. Then I glue the man together and I put him onto the boat. Then I do the same with all these accessories. Then I take the boat and I glue it onto the plastic in its place. And then I sprinkle the lily pads around the boat and take the tops of the horns from the dragon and glue those in place as well. I also decided to create some ripples across the water from the boat, so I just cut little strips out from cardstock and I glue them around the boat. Then I placed the fish down on some lily pads near the bottom of the lake, and it's time to assemble everything. I take my foam board and I cut a bunch of half-inch strips. Then I start gluing the layers together. I wanted lots of depth in this light box, so I stacked 2 strips of foam board on top of each other between each layer instead of just one. And now it's time to light this light box, and normally I have LED strips, but I lost them, so I used a different technique. I got some thin origami paper and I picked the colors I wanted. In this case, it was this really light green and yellow, and then I just glue those 2 pieces of paper together. And then I have this super strong lamp, and I stand up the papers in front of it. It's important that the paper is really thin because then the light will shine through and the colors will also shine through. Then I place the light box in front of that light, and it has a similar effect as having an LED. And here it is all done. I'm super happy with how it looks. I love the effect that the plastic has, and I'm really happy with the story I came up for it, but let me know what you guys think. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!